I'm Amelia, 35 years old, and I never thought my family could be destroyed by someone we trusted. My son Tyler and husband Jake meant everything to me until his new teacher entered our lives. She seemed perfect at first, but my motherly instincts screamed danger. What I discovered in her basement didn't just save my family, it exposed a predator. Before I tell you how I found the evidence that saved my family, let me know where you're watching from. And hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt someone was hiding something from you. Connecticut was the perfect place to raise our family. The tree-lined streets of our suburban neighborhood provided the ideal backdrop for the life Jake and I had built together. Our two-story colonial home with the bright blue door stood as a testament to our journey from high school sweethearts to a family of three. I owned a small but successful art gallery in town, something I had built from nothing after getting my degree in fine arts. It had been my dream to create a space that showcased local talent, and after years of hard work, I'd finally made it happen. The gallery had become a community hub hosting events that brought people together through creativity. I loved watching visitors connect with the artwork, finding pieces that spoke to them in ways words couldn't. Jake worked as an architectural engineer, designing buildings that combined function and beauty. He had always been my biggest supporter, encouraging me to open the gallery, even when finances were tight. We balanced each other well. His practical nature complemented my artistic spirit. Our son Tyler was the perfect blend of us both. At 8 years old, he had Jake's analytical mind and my creative soul. He was slightly introverted, but had a small circle of close friends. His room was filled with detailed Lego creations and sketchbooks brimming with colorful drawings. Tyler had Jake's warm brown eyes and my curly hair, a physical representation of our love. Our mornings typically started with breakfast together, all three of us at the kitchen island. Jake would make his famous scrambled eggs, while I packed Tyler's lunch always, including a little note with a joke or words of encouragement. Tyler would tell us about the dreams he had the night before, his imagination creating entire worlds while he slept. Weekends were for family adventures, hiking trails in the nearby state park, visiting museums in the city, or simply having movie nights with homemade popcorn. We weren't perfect, but we were happy, connected, and secure in our love for one another. When the new school year approached, Tyler was both nervous and excited about third grade. His previous teacher had retired, and the school had hired someone new, Ms. Natalie Harper. At the back-to-school night, we met her for the first time, Ms. Harper was captivating from the moment she introduced herself. She stood at the front of the classroom with perfect posture, her dark hair pulled back in a sophisticated bun. Her classroom was immaculate, with educational posters and student work displayed in a way that made the room feel both professional and welcoming. "I believe in nurturing the whole child," she told the group of parents. "Academic excellence is important, but emotional growth is equally valuable." I noticed how every parent seemed drawn to her. She made eye contact with each person as she spoke, making them feel like her words were meant specifically for them. There was something magnetic about her presence that I couldn't quite define. Jake was particularly impressed. "She seems really invested in the kids," he whispered to me during her presentation. "Tyler's going to have a great year." As the evening continued, Ms. Harper explained her teaching philosophy and the special projects she had planned for the year. She mentioned needing parent volunteers, and Jake immediately signed up to help with the classroom's science projects. His enthusiasm didn't surprise me. He had always been an involved father who enjoyed participating in Tyler's education. When we had our individual conference with her, Ms. Harper praised Tyler's previous academic records and seemed genuinely excited to have him in her class. "I can already tell Tyler is special," she said, reviewing his file. "I have a feeling we'll work wonderfully together." There was something about the way she said "we" that made me pause, but I brushed it off. Her enthusiasm for teaching was refreshing, and I was grateful Tyler would have someone so passionate guiding him. As we were leaving, I noticed a small detail that struck me as odd. Her desk had several framed photos, but they were all facing away from view. When she saw me looking at them, she quickly moved to her desk and adjusted them further away from my line of sight. It seemed strange, but I didn't dwell on it. On the first day of school, Tyler was buzzing with excitement. He barely touched his breakfast, eager to get to class and meet his new teacher officially. When I picked him up that afternoon, his eyes were wide with admiration. "Ms. Harper is the best teacher ever, Mom." She knows everything about dinosaurs and space and art. She said my drawing was the best in the class, he gushed, clutching a paper with a gold star in the corner. His immediate fascination with his teacher seemed sweet, if a bit intense. Over dinner that night, Jake asked about his day, and Tyler couldn't stop talking about Ms. Harper, her stories, her classroom rules, the special reading nook she had created. She said I can join her special art group that meets after school on Wednesdays, Tyler announced proudly. She said I have real talent. Jake and I exchanged pleased glances. Our son was clearly engaging with school in a new and exciting way. What could possibly be wrong with that? As September rolled into October, Jake became increasingly involved with classroom activities. He volunteered not just for the science projects as originally planned, but for field trips, reading groups, and classroom maintenance. His dedication to Tyler's education seemed admirable, but something about it made me uneasy. "You're spending a lot of time at the school lately," I mentioned one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. Jake shrugged. "Ms. Harper needs the help, and it's good for Tyler to see me involved." His tone was casual, but he didn't quite meet my eyes. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jake was just being a good father, and Ms. Harper was just being a dedicated teacher. Everything was fine. Our family was perfect. But even as I reassured myself, a small voice inside whispered that something wasn't quite right. The first real change I noticed in Tyler came about 6 weeks into the school year. My typically talkative son became unusually quiet at home. He would rush through dinner claiming he needed to finish homework, then disappear into his room for the rest of the evening. "Is everything okay at school?" I asked one night as I tucked him in. "School is great," he replied quickly. Too quickly. "Ms. Harper says I'm her special helper." When I tried to probe deeper, he turned away claiming he was tired. This from the boy who typically negotiated for 3 more stories and 5 more minutes before bedtime. One afternoon while doing laundry, I found a crumpled drawing in Tyler's jeans pocket. Unlike his usual bright, cheerful artwork, this picture showed dark, swirling shapes surrounding a small figure. In the corner, there was a strange symbol I didn't recognize. A circle with lines radiating from it like a sun, but with an odd angular shape in the center. When I asked Tyler about it, he snatched it from my hands. "It's private." He said something he'd never said about his art before. "Ms. Harper taught me special drawing techniques to express my feelings." The following week, while unpacking his backpack, I found a handwritten note from Ms. Harper tucked inside his reading folder. "My special boy, Tyler, I'm so proud of how you're keeping our secrets. You're becoming exactly who you're meant to be. Remember, some things are just for us to understand. See you in our special session tomorrow. Your real teacher, Ms. H." The note's tone sent a chill through me. What secrets was my 8-year-old keeping with his teacher? What special sessions was she referring to? And why emphasize the word real teacher? That same evening, Jake mentioned he'd be staying late at school the next day to help Ms. Harper rearrange her classroom library. Again, I tried to keep my voice neutral. "That's the 3rd time this month. She needs the help, Amelia. And honestly, I enjoy it. It's nice to feel appreciated." There was an edge to his voice that caught me off guard. The following day, I ran into Melissa Carter, mother of Emma, another student in Tyler's class at the supermarket. "How is Tyler adjusting to Ms. Harper's class?" she asked, her voice lowered despite no one being nearby. "He seems to really like her," I replied carefully. "Why do you ask?" Melissa glanced around before speaking. "Emma's been having nightmares. She says Ms. Harper tells stories during circle time that frighten her. Stories about children who leave their families to find better ones." My stomach tightened. "Has Emma been invited to any special sessions after school?" "No." Melissa looked confused. "But Emma mentioned that only certain kids get picked for those. She said Tyler is Ms. Harper's golden boy, whatever that means." That weekend, the school hosted a fall festival. Families gathered on the playground for games, food, and community building. I watched as Ms. Harper moved through the crowd, stopping to chat with parents and children, her presence commanding attention wherever she went. When she approached our family, I noticed how her gaze lingered on Jake. Her hand touched his arm as she laughed at something he said. Her body angled toward him in a way that excluded Tyler and me. "Jake, your volunteer work has been invaluable," she said, her voice dropping to an intimate level. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Jake beamed under her praise, and something cold settled in my chest. Later that evening, I tried to talk to Tyler about his teacher again. Honey, what happens in those special sessions with Ms. Harper? Tyler's face immediately closed off. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Ms. Harper says some people wouldn't understand our connection. What connection, Tyler? I pressed gently. She says she understands me better than anyone. Even better than you and Dad sometimes. His voice was matter of fact, as though this was a perfectly normal thing for a teacher to say to a student. When I mentioned this conversation to Jake, his reaction stunned me. You're overanalyzing things, Amelia. You always do this. Look for problems where there aren't any. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. Ms. Harper is an exceptional teacher who's taking a special interest in our son. Why can't you just be grateful? Don't you think it's inappropriate for her to tell Tyler she understands him better than his parents? I countered. I'm sure Tyler misunderstood or is exaggerating. Kids do that. Jake's dismissal was so casual, so unlike him, that I felt like I was talking to a stranger. That night during dinner, Jake mentioned Ms. Harper 7 times. Her innovative teaching methods, her dedication to her students, her insights into childhood development. Each reference made my skin crawl. You talk about her an awful lot, I finally said, unable to contain my concern any longer. Because she's an important part of Tyler's life right now, Jake snapped. Maybe if you volunteered at the school instead of being wrapped up in your gallery all the time, you'd understand what I'm talking about. Tyler's eyes widened at his father's tone. Jake had never spoken to me like that before, especially not in front of our son. I think Ms. Harper is right. Jake continued, his voice cold. Some people just don't understand the importance of educational connections. That night we had our first major fight about Ms. Harper. Words were exchanged that couldn't be taken back. Jake slept in the guest room, and I lay awake wondering how a woman we'd only known for 2 months had managed to come between us so effectively. November brought the first report card of the year, and I was shocked to see Tyler's grades. His previous straight A's had dropped to C's in every subject except Ms. Harper's language arts class, where he received an A+. When I questioned Tyler about this change, he became defensive. Ms. Harper says other subjects aren't as important as understanding people and relationships, he mumbled. She says numbers and facts don't matter as much as feelings. One afternoon, I found Tyler crying in his room, curled up on his bed with his face buried in his pillow. Sweetheart, what's wrong? I sat beside him, rubbing small circles on his back the way I had since he was a baby. Nothing, he replied, his voice muffled. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red and swollen. You can tell me anything you know that, right? He shook his head. Ms. Harper says some things should stay between her and me. She says you wouldn't understand because you're too conventional. Conventional what? 8-year-old used that word? It was clearly something he had heard and was repeating. The next day, Tyler brought home an art project, a drawing of what he labeled my new family. The picture showed 3 figures, a tall woman with dark hair that I recognized as Ms. Harper, a man that looked like Jake, and a small boy I assumed was Tyler. They were standing in front of a house that wasn't ours. I was missing from the picture entirely. My hands shaking, I decided it was time to speak with the school principal. I made an appointment with Principal Davis for the following morning, bringing Tyler's concerning artwork and the strange note I had found. Principal Davis listened politely, but seemed unmoved by my concerns. Ms. Harper is one of our most acclaimed new teachers, he explained. Her students show remarkable emotional growth, and parents consistently praise her methods. These materials you've brought me simply show a teacher who's deeply invested in her students' development. But she's telling my son not to share things with me, I insisted. She's coming between Tyler and his family. Principal Davis leaned back in his chair with a patient smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Bennett, sometimes, when children bond with a teacher, parents can feel threatened. It's quite normal. I assure you Ms. Harper is following all appropriate protocols. I left his office feeling dismissed and increasingly isolated in my concerns. That afternoon, I decided to pick Tyler up early from school, claiming a doctor's appointment. I arrived during their classroom's reading time and peered through the small window in the door before entering. What I saw made my blood run cold. Ms. Harper was sitting at her desk with Jake beside her. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, simply looking at papers together. But the intimacy of their posture told a different story. Her hand rested on his arm, and she was leaning so close that her hair brushed his shoulder. Jake was smiling at her in a way he hadn't smiled at me in weeks. I knocked sharply and entered, watching as they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Amelia? Jake's voice held surprise and something else, annoyance. What are you doing here? Tyler has a dentist appointment. I lied smoothly. I mentioned it last week. You most certainly did not. Jake countered, his tone accusatory. Ms. Harper stepped forward, her professional mask sliding seamlessly into place. It's lovely to see you, Mrs. Bennett. Tyler is such a joy to teach. The way she emphasized Mrs. Bennett while calling my husband Jake wasn't lost on me. That evening, while Jake was showering, I did something I'd never done before. I checked his phone. My hands trembled as I scrolled through his text messages. There were dozens of exchanges with Natalie H. Most appeared to be about Tyler or classroom activities, but there was an undercurrent of familiarity that made my stomach turn. Tyler shared something important today. We should discuss it privately. Your perspective means everything to me, Jake. Not everyone understands children the way we do. Sometimes I think we're the only ones who truly see what Tyler needs. The next day, Jake told me he'd be working late. Feeling sick with suspicion, I called his office at 7 p.m. Jake left around 5, his colleague informed me, said he had a family commitment. Family commitment. The only family he had was at home waiting for him. That same week, Tyler mentioned something that sent ice through my veins. I had so much fun at Ms. Harper's house yesterday. Dad and I helped her paint her living room, and she made us cookies that tasted like the ones Grandma used to make. You went to Ms. Harper's house. I kept my voice calm, despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. Yeah, after my special lesson. Dad picked me up from school and we went together. Ms. Harper says her house could be my house too someday. Sleep became increasingly elusive. Night after night, I lay awake replaying conversations and interactions, second-guessing myself. Was I overreacting? Was I, as Jake suggested, just jealous of the time he and Tyler were spending with this woman? My distraction began affecting my work at the gallery. I missed emails, forgot about meetings with artists, and struggled to focus during conversations with clients. My assistant Rachel finally confronted me. Amelia, what's going on? This isn't like you. I broke down and told her everything. Saying it aloud to someone else made it sound even more disturbing than it had in my head. 2 nights later, Jake and I had our worst confrontation yet. I think you need to step back from your involvement with Ms. Harper, I said, trying to keep my voice level. It's affecting our family. What exactly are you accusing me of, Amelia? His eyes were cold in a way I'd never seen before. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm saying this woman is coming between us, between you and me, between me and Tyler. Maybe the problem isn't Natalie, he said, using her first name deliberately. Maybe it's you and your paranoia. Maybe it's your jealousy and controlling nature. His words hit like physical blows. Tyler and I both feel it, he continued. The way you question everything, the way you can't just be happy that he has a teacher who actually cares about him as a person. That night, Jake slept in the guest room again. As I lay alone in our bed, my phone pinged with a text from my best friend Sarah. Something isn't right, Amelia. Trust your instincts. Dig deeper. December arrived with a chill that matched the growing coldness in my home. I started documenting everything in a journal. Every strange comment from Tyler. Every unexplained absence from Jake. Every interaction with Ms. Harper. One afternoon, I decided to follow Jake when he said he was going to a client meeting. I watched from my car as he drove not to his office, but to a modest blue house in a neighborhood about 20 minutes from ours. Ms. Harper opened the door before he even knocked, welcoming him inside with a familiarity that made my heart ache. I waited, taking photos when they eventually emerged to sit on her front porch, cups of what looked like coffee in their hands. They weren't touching, but their body language spoke of an ease and intimacy that Jake and I had lost somewhere along the way. That night, I began researching Natalie Harper online. Her digital footprint was surprisingly thin for someone in her 30s. Her social media accounts were all less than 2 years old, and there were no photos older than that period. Her teaching credentials checked out according to the school website, but something felt off. I dug deeper and discovered that Natalie Harper had only received her teaching certification 18 months ago. Before that, there was virtually no professional history I could find. A woman approaching 40 with only 2 years of career history. It didn't add up. The following week, while waiting to pick up Tyler, I noticed a mother I hadn't seen before. She was standing apart from the other parents, her posture tense. Something about her expression, watchful, wary, resonated with me. I approached her cautiously. "Hi, I'm Amelia Bennett Tyler's mom." She regarded me with cautious eyes. "Diana Lopez. My daughter Zoe was in Ms. Harper's class last year." I asked, noting the past tense. Diana glanced around before speaking, her voice low. "We transferred Zoe to another school mid-year. I came today to speak with the principal." My pulse quickened. "May I ask why you transferred her?" Diana's eyes filled with tears. "Ms. Harper became fixated on my family. She tried to convince my husband that I was emotionally neglecting Zoe. She suggested he seek emergency custody." Her voice broke. "We nearly divorced because of her interference. It took months of therapy to repair the damage she caused." My hand flew to my mouth. "Did you report her?" "Of course. The principal dismissed it as a misunderstanding. The superintendent said without proof it was just our word against a respected educator." She handed me a slip of paper with her phone number. "Be careful, Mrs. Bennett. You're not imagining things. Trust yourself." That night, Tyler woke up screaming from a nightmare. When I rushed to his room, he was sitting up in bed, his pajamas soaked with sweat. "She was taking me away," he sobbed. "She said I couldn't live with you anymore because you didn't love me the right way." I held him until he fell asleep again, my mind racing. The next morning, Tyler claimed he couldn't remember the dream, and for the first time since school began, he said he didn't want to go. "I don't feel good," he mumbled, his face buried in his pillow. "My stomach hurts." I called the school to report his absence, and Ms. Harper herself returned my call almost immediately. "Is everything all right with Tyler?" Her voice held concern that might have seemed genuine if I hadn't been so suspicious. "We have a special project today that he wouldn't want to miss." "He's not feeling well," I replied simply. "That's strange. He was fine yesterday when Jake picked him up for our after-school session." There was a pause. "Perhaps I should come by after school to drop off the materials he'll miss." "That won't be necessary," I said quickly. "Jake can pick them up tomorrow." After I hung up, Tyler appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, a small silver key in his palm. "I found this in my backpack," he said, his voice small. "I don't know what it's for." I took the key, turning it over in my fingers. It wasn't labeled, but it was distinctive, old-fashioned with an ornate bow. "Ms. Harper said it's a special key that opens special doors," Tyler continued, "but it made my tummy feel funny when I saw it." I slipped the key into my pocket, my mind whirling with possibilities, and none of them good. That afternoon, I met Sarah for coffee and showed her the journal I'd been keeping along with the mysterious key. "Amelia, this is beyond concerning," she said after reviewing my notes. "This woman sounds like she's trying to replace you in Tyler's life, and Jake's. The school won't listen. Jake thinks I'm paranoid. I don't know what to do next." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Keep gathering evidence. And Amelia, be careful. This woman sounds dangerous." When I returned home, Jake was waiting, his face thunderous. "Ms. Harper called me. She said you were rude to her on the phone and refused her help with Tyler's missed work." "That's not what happened," I began, but he cut me off. "I don't even recognize you anymore, Amelia. Your jealousy is out of control. Your paranoia is affecting Tyler." "My paranoia?" I was incredulous. "Jake, this woman is inserting herself into our family. She's turning our son against me. She's turning you against me." "Maybe I see things clearly now," he said coldly. "Maybe I see who you really are." As December progressed, my gallery suffered from my divided attention. I was supposed to be planning our big holiday showcase, but I could barely focus on selecting artists, let alone marketing the event. The gallery had always been my sanctuary, my place of pride and accomplishment. Now, it felt like just another thing I was failing at. The final parent-teacher conference before winter break was tense. Ms. Harper greeted Jake warmly and me with cool professionalism. As she reviewed Tyler's progress, she emphasized how well he did when properly supported at school, with a pointed glance in my direction. Tyler has shared some concerns with me, she said, her voice taking on a confidential tone. He feels some pressure at home, some instability. What exactly are you implying? I asked, feeling Jake stiffen beside me. Ms. Harper's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm not implying anything, Mrs. Bennett. I'm simply sharing observations as a mandated reporter concerned about a student's well-being. The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable. This woman was suggesting she might report me to Child Protective Services. As we left the conference, Jake wouldn't meet my eyes. She's just doing her job, he muttered when I tried to discuss what had happened. Her job is to teach our son math and reading, not to evaluate our parenting. I shot back. Jake simply shook his head and walked ahead to the car. The week before Christmas, Jake dropped the bomb that shattered what was left of our family's stability. I need some space, he announced one evening after Tyler had gone to bed. I'm going to stay with a friend for a while. A friend, I repeated, my voice hollow. Or Ms. Harper. This is exactly why I need space, Amelia. Your accusations, your suspicion. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. I can't live like this anymore. Jake, please, I begged, reaching for his hand. Can't you see what's happening? She's coming between us deliberately. He pulled away from my touch. I'll pick up Tyler for school tomorrow and bring him home after. We can work out a schedule. When Tyler learned his father was moving out, he burst into tears. It's my fault, he sobbed. Ms. Harper said this might happen. What? I was stunned. Tyler, what exactly did Ms. Harper tell you? Between hiccuping sobs, Tyler revealed that his teacher had been telling him for weeks that I didn't love him the right way, and that eventually Jake would see it too. She said sometimes families need to change to be better, Tyler whispered. She said she could be a better mom for me. Rage, unlike anything I'd ever felt, coursed through me. This woman had been psychologically manipulating my child, poisoning him against me, filling his head with the idea that I was somehow deficient as a mother. 2 days later came another blow. At the school's holiday concert, Ms. Harper took it upon herself to help Tyler with his costume when I was clearly there to do so. In front of other parents, she commented loudly about how some mothers just don't understand their children's needs while adjusting his collar. When I tried to intervene, she placed herself physically between Tyler and me. I've got this, Mrs. Bennett. Why don't you just take a seat? This is probably all a bit overwhelming for you. Several parents glanced away awkwardly. Others watched with undisguised curiosity. I felt humiliated and increasingly isolated. That evening, while Tyler was with Jake, I went through Tyler's backpack more thoroughly than usual. Tucked in a hidden pocket of his school binder, I found several photocopied pages of what appeared to be legal documents. Though partially redacted, I could make out enough to realize they were templates for filing emergency custody proceedings, with notes about psychological caregivers having standing in certain cases. My blood ran cold. This woman was preparing to try to take my son. When Jake dropped Tyler off later, I confronted him with the documents. Do you know anything about this? I demanded, my hand shaking as I held out the papers. Jake's face registered genuine shock. Where did you find these? In Tyler's backpack. Ms. Harper put them there. I watched his expression carefully. Jake, she's planning something. She wants our son. For the first time in months, uncertainty flickered across his face. That doesn't make sense. Why would she? Because she's not who she claims to be, I interrupted. I've been doing research. Her teaching history doesn't add up. The mother of a former student told me Ms. Harper tried to break up their family too. Jake ran his hand over his face. Amelia, you need help. You're connecting dots that aren't there. Natalie has been concerned that you're becoming unstable, and honestly, I'm starting to agree. His words hit me like a physical blow. She's convinced you I'm crazy. No one said crazy. He backpedaled. Just not yourself. Paranoid, jealous, making up conspiracies. I stared at the man I had loved since we were teenagers, the father of my child, and saw a stranger looking back at me. Ms. Harper had done this. She had methodically driven a wedge between us, manipulated Jake, poisoned Tyler against me, and now she was setting the stage to take my family away completely. That night alone in our bed, I fell apart completely. The sobs tore from somewhere deep and primal, the fear and rage and helplessness all pouring out, until I was empty and hollow. When dawn broke, I was still awake, staring at the ceiling, but something had changed. The despair had hardened into determination. If no one would believe me, I would have to get proof they couldn't ignore. I called Sarah, who came immediately with coffee and unwavering support. "You're not crazy," she said firmly. "I've watched this unfold. Something is seriously wrong with this woman and her interest in your family." Together, we formulated a plan. Ms. Harper would be hosting the class holiday party the following day. With both Jake and Tyler at the school, her house would be empty. The mysterious key Tyler had found might be our only chance to discover what she was hiding. "This is breaking and entering," Sarah warned. "It's illegal." "So is trying to steal someone's family," I replied, my voice steady. "If I'm wrong, I'll face the consequences. But I don't think I am." We planned carefully. Sarah would wait in the car as a lookout. I would use the key and search for evidence. If I found nothing, I would leave immediately, and perhaps seek the professional help Jake thought I needed. But if I was right? Before leaving that night, I took one last look at Tyler sleeping peacefully in his bed, his small face relaxed in slumber. I would do anything to protect him, even risk my freedom if necessary. "I love you the right way, Tyler," I whispered, stroking his hair gently. "And I always will." The next morning dawned cold and clear. I dropped Tyler off at school, my heart breaking at how eagerly he ran to Ms. Harper, barely looking back to wave goodbye to me. I then drove to the gallery and informed my assistant I would be taking a personal day before meeting Sarah at our predetermined location. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked as we parked a block away from Ms. Harper's blue house. I clutched the small silver key in my palm until the edges bit into my skin. I've never been more sure of anything. The neighborhood was quiet, most residents at work or school. Ms. Harper's house sat apart from its neighbors, partially shielded by mature pine trees. I approached from the side, moving quickly, but trying to appear casual in case anyone happened to be watching. The key didn't fit the front door as I had expected. I tried the back entrance and felt the tumbler give way with a soft click. Taking a deep breath, I slipped inside. The interior of Ms. Harper's home was immaculate. Too immaculate, like a showroom rather than a lived-in space. Everything was perfectly arranged, from the magazines fanned precisely on the coffee table to the decorative pillows positioned at exact angles on the sofa. The house had the sterile feel of a stage set. I moved cautiously through the living room, noting the lack of personal photos or mementos. The kitchen was equally impersonal. Clean countertops, empty sink, nothing left out. It felt as though no one actually cooked here. In the dining room, I noticed a stack of children's drawings on the table. Flipping through them, I recognized Tyler's distinctive style, along with artwork from other students. Each drawing was labeled and dated, almost like evidence being cataloged. The hallway led to a home office, and this is where I found the first truly disturbing sign that my suspicions were justified. An entire wall was covered with photos, dozens of them arranged in clusters. One grouping showed Tyler at school, at the park, even playing in our front yard, places where Ms. Harper shouldn't have been. Another cluster showed Jake, at his office at the hardware store, jogging on his usual route. There were photos of our house from different angles. But Tyler and Jake weren't the only subjects. There were other families too, arranged in similar groupings. Children and fathers, houses, and schools. In one corner, partially hidden behind a curtain, was a collection of newspaper clippings about custody battles and family court cases. My hands trembled as I took out my phone and began photographing everything. I found a drawer filled with journals and pulled one out at random. The neat handwriting inside made my skin crawl. Family Acquisition Project Number 7, the Bennetts. Target child, Tyler, 8. Bright, sensitive, artistically inclined. Target father, Jake, 37. Protective, involved, susceptible to flattery regarding his parenting. Mother, Amelia, 35. Obstacle. Strategies for removal initiated. I photographed page after page, detailing Ms. Harper's systematic plan to insert herself into our lives, to undermine my relationship with both Tyler and Jake, to position herself as the superior maternal figure. There were notes about using Tyler's art to access his subconscious, and about exploiting Jake's desire for understanding and appreciation. In another journal, I found references to previous acquisitions, other families, other children, other schools, different names, different cities. Natalie Harper, it seemed, wasn't even her real name. On her desk was a legal document partially filled out, a petition for emergency custody naming Natalie Harper as Tyler's psychological parent and alleging emotional neglect on my part. Attached was a document that appeared to be a statement from Jake supporting her petition, though it wasn't signed. As disturbing as these discoveries were, nothing prepared me for what I found next. A door at the end of the hallway had 3 separate locks, 2 standard locks and a deadbolt. The small silver key fit the bottom lock. I found keys hanging on a hook nearby that opened the others. Taking a deep breath, I turned all 3 and pushed the door open. The stairs led down to a basement that had been transformed into what could only be described as a child's bedroom. But not just any child's bedroom. It was a meticulous recreation of Tyler's room at our house, down to the exact same blue comforter and space-themed lamp. On the walls were posters of Tyler's favorite movies and bands. A bookshelf held all the titles I knew to be his favorites. But there were disturbing differences, too. Family photos had been altered. Images of me had been cut out and replaced with pictures of Ms. Harper. A calendar on the wall had dates circled, including one just 3 days away labeled Transition Day. On a desk was a recorder and several tapes labeled with dates. With shaking hands, I pressed play on the most recent one. Ms. Harper's voice filled the room. "Remember what we practiced, Tyler. When they ask you if mommy ever hurts you, what do you say?" Tyler's small voice responded, hesitant and confused. "But my mom doesn't hurt me." "That's not the right answer, Tyler." Ms. Harper's voice turned cold. "Let's try again. When they ask if mommy ever hurts you, you say, 'Sometimes she grabs me too hard when she's angry.' Can you say that for me?" I felt physically ill listening to this woman coaching my son to lie about abuse that had never happened. Another shelf held what appeared to be prescription bottles. I examined them carefully and took photos of the labels. Some I recognized as mild sedatives, others as medications that could cause confusion or suggestibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Someone just pulled into the driveway next door. Hurry." I quickly gathered as much evidence as I could, taking photos and video, even grabbing one of the journals that detailed her plans for our family. I was heading back up the stairs when I heard the unmistakable sound of a key in the front door. My heart nearly stopped. Ms. Harper was supposed to be at the school party for at least another hour. I froze, trapped in the basement with no other exit. Footsteps moved through the house, coming closer to the basement door. I pressed myself against the wall, praying the darkness would hide me. The door at the top of the stairs opened, and light spilled down. "Hello?" Ms. Harper's voice called out. "Is someone there?" I remained perfectly still, barely breathing. She took a step down, then another. "I know someone's here. The alarm system sent an alert to my phone." I hadn't noticed any alarm system. It must have been silent. As she descended further, I realized I had no choice. I bolted up the stairs, pushing past her with all my strength. She grabbed at my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "You," she hissed, recognition flashing in her eyes. "I knew you'd be trouble." I wrenched free and ran for the front door, her footsteps pounding behind me. Outside, I sprinted toward Sarah's car, not looking back even as I heard Ms. Harper's shouts. "She has a gun in her car," I gasped as I threw myself into the passenger seat. "Drive!" Sarah peeled away from the curb, her face white with fear. "Did she see you clearly? Did she see the car?" "Yes to both." I admitted, my heart racing. "We need to get this evidence to the police right away." "No," Sarah countered, making an unexpected turn. "We need to get it to Jake first. If she realizes what you found, she might try to take Tyler immediately." She was right. Ms. Harper now knew I had discovered her plans. There was no telling what she might do in desperation. "She's been drugging him," I said, my voice breaking as I showed Sarah the photos of the medication bottles. "She's been manipulating our son, coaching him to lie about me abusing him. She has a whole room set up for him in her basement. She's planning to take him in 3 days. Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. We're going to stop her, Amelia. This ends now. We headed straight to Jake's office, praying we weren't too late. It was just past noon when Sarah and I arrived at the architectural firm where Jake worked. My hands trembled as I clutched my phone and the journal I'd taken from Ms. Harper's house. The receptionist recognized me and waved us back to Jake's office without asking questions. When Jake saw us, his expression shifted from surprise to irritation. Amelia, I'm in the middle of a workday. What's so urgent? It couldn't wait. This, I said, placing my phone on his desk. Look at these photos. All of them. Now. Something in my voice must have conveyed the gravity of the situation. Without argument, Jake began scrolling through the images I'd captured in Ms. Harper's home. I watched his face carefully, seeing the initial skepticism give way to confusion, then shock, and finally horror. Where did you get these? His voice was barely audible. From Natalie Harper's house. From her basement, where she has a replica of Tyler's bedroom ready for when she takes him from us. I opened the journal to a marked page. Read this. It details how she's been manipulating you, drugging you during those coffee meetings at her house, to make you suggestible, turning you against me systematically. Jake's face drained of color as he read the clinical detached notes about himself. Subject J continues to respond well to low-dose administration in beverages. Increased suggestibility noted after 15 to 20 minutes. Most effective approach is to praise his parenting while subtly undermining wife. He now initiates negative comments about A without prompting, ready to move to phase 3. This can't be real, Jake muttered, but the doubt in his voice was fading with each photo he examined. Listen to this, I said, playing one of the audio recordings I'd captured from the basement. Ms. Harper's voice instructing Tyler on what to say about me coaching him to lie about abuse. Jake's hands began to shake. My God, Amelia, she's been manipulating all of us, I said gently. It's not your fault, Jake. She's done this before to other families. Sarah spoke up. We need to get Tyler now. She knows Amelia was in her house. She'll realize what's been discovered. Jake stood immediately, all traces of the distant critical man he'd been recently vanishing as the fog of Ms. Harper's manipulation lifted. Tyler's still at school, with her. We raced to Jake's car, calling the police on the way. I explained the situation as succinctly as possible, emphasizing the evidence we had and the immediate danger to our son. The dispatcher promised to send officers to the school right away. As we sped toward Franklin Elementary, Jake reached over and gripped my hand. Amelia, I'm so sorry. The things I said to you, the way I treated you. I don't know how I could have been so blind. Later, I said, squeezing his hand. We'll sort through everything later. Right now, we just need to get to Tyler. When we arrived at the school, the holiday party was in full swing. Parents and children filled the gymnasium, the air festive with music and laughter. We pushed through the crowd, searching desperately for Tyler's class. Principal Davis intercepted us, his expression concerned. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, is everything all right? You seem distressed. Where is Ms. Harper's class? Jake demanded. In the art room, I believe. They were making ornaments for the school tree. Is there a problem? We didn't wait to explain, hurrying toward the art classroom. Through the window in the door, I could see children working at tables, but neither Tyler nor Ms. Harper was among them. The classroom aide looked up as we burst in. Can I help you? Where's Tyler? I asked, struggling to keep my voice calm. Where's Ms. Harper? The young woman looked confused. Ms. Harper took Tyler to the nurse's office about 20 minutes ago. She said he wasn't feeling well and that you had been called to pick him up. Jake and I exchanged horrified glances before racing toward the nurse's office. It was empty except for the school nurse, who confirmed that neither Ms. Harper nor Tyler had been there. Check the parking lot, I told Jake. I'll look in her classroom. Sarah, stay here in case she brings him back. Ms. Harper's empty classroom revealed signs of hasty departure. Her purse was gone, her desk drawer left open. On her computer screen was an email draft never sent addressed to the principal. Family emergency. Need to leave immediately. Will explain later. My phone rang. Jake. Her car's gone, he said, his voice tight with fear. And I found Tyler's backpack abandoned by the side entrance. At that moment, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. We met the officers at the front entrance, quickly explaining the situation. One officer immediately put out an alert for Ms. Harper's vehicle, while another began questioning school staff about when they had last seen her and Tyler. The principal, now fully aware of the seriousness of the situation, provided Ms. Harper's personnel file, which included her home address and vehicle information. He appeared stunned by the accusations. "She came with excellent references," he kept saying. "Outstanding recommendations from her previous school." "References she likely falsified," I replied grimly. "We found evidence suggesting she's done this before in other districts under other names." While the police organized their search, Jake, Sarah, and I returned to Ms. Harper's house, accompanied by 2 officers. The house was empty, the basement door now locked with a padlock that hadn't been there during my earlier visit. One of the officers forced the door open, and everyone stood in shocked silence at the sight of the replica of Tyler's bedroom. "This is—" Jake couldn't finish his sentence, overwhelmed by the evidence of Ms. Harper's obsession with our son. The officers photographed everything, collecting the medication bottles, recordings, and journals as evidence. As they worked, my phone rang. An unknown number. "Mrs. Bennett," a woman's voice I didn't recognize. "My name is Officer Ramirez. We've located Ms. Harper's vehicle abandoned at a bus station about 15 miles from the school. We believe she and your son may have boarded a bus to Portsmouth." My knees buckled and Jake caught me before I could fall. Ms. Harper was running and she had our son. The next few hours passed in a blur of police activity, surveillance footage reviews, and desperate phone calls. The bus company confirmed that a woman and young boy matching their descriptions had purchased tickets to Portsmouth, where the trail temporarily went cold. By evening, law enforcement in Portsmouth had been alerted, and security camera footage from the bus station there showed Ms. Harper and Tyler getting into a taxi. The taxi driver, when located, recalled dropping them at a motel on the outskirts of town. It was nearly midnight when my phone rang again. The Portsmouth police. They had found them. Tyler was safe. Ms. Harper was in custody. Jake and I drove through the night to reach the Portsmouth police station, neither of us speaking much, both processing the enormity of what had nearly happened. When we arrived, an officer led us to a small room where Tyler sat wrapped in a blanket, a kind-faced female officer beside him. "Mom, Dad—" Tyler launched himself into our arms, and we held him, all 3 of us crying with relief and lingering fear. "She said we were going on an adventure," Tyler explained later as we drove home, his small hand clutching mine in the back seat. "But then she got really scary when I said I wanted to call you. She said you didn't want me anymore, but I knew that wasn't true." Over the following days, the full scope of Natalie Harper's deception began to emerge. Her real name was Eleanor Winters, and she had a history of similar behavior in 2 other states. In each case, she had targeted a family with a child she became fixated on, usually insinuating herself into their lives through a position of trust, as a teacher, tutor, or childcare worker. The police found documentation of at least 5 previous acquisition attempts, 3 of which had been abandoned when her manipulation tactics failed. In 2 cases, she had succeeded in temporarily gaining access to the children through false allegations against the mothers, though both situations had eventually been resolved without permanent harm. The medications found in her home were traced to prescriptions written by a psychiatrist whose identity she had stolen. The journals detailed her methodical approach to selecting and isolating families with particular focus on children who matched a specific profile: creative, sensitive, slightly isolated, and fathers she deemed malleable. As the investigation continued, other families came forward with similar stories of Ms. Harper, or Ms. Winters, or any of her other aliases, attempting to insert herself into their lives. The pattern was always the same: gain trust, isolate the child emotionally, drive wedges between family members, and position herself as the superior caregiver. For our family, the road to recovery was difficult, but strengthened by our shared trauma. Tyler worked with a child psychologist who specialized in manipulation and emotional abuse. Initially, he struggled with confusion and misplaced guilt, believing somehow that he had caused the problems between Jake and me. "Ms. Harper said if I wasn't good enough, you guys would stop loving each other," he confessed during a family therapy session, breaking my heart all over again. Jake, too, had to process his own manipulation and the things he had said and done under Ms. Harper's influence. The toxicology reports confirmed low levels of several sedatives and anti-anxiety medications in his system, explaining some of his uncharacteristic behavior, though the psychological manipulation had been equally powerful. I keep replaying everything in my mind. He told me one night as we sat on our porch rebuilding our connection, one conversation at a time. How could I not have seen what was happening? How could I have turned against you that way? She was methodical, I reminded him. She knew exactly what she was doing and she'd done it before. We both got played. What matters is that we found our way back to each other. 3 months after Ms. Harper's arrest, I received a call from Diana Lopez, the mother who had warned me outside the school. I heard they're bringing additional charges based on evidence from your case, she said. Thank you for being brave enough to find the proof. You've protected other families from going through what we did. That spring, I organized a support group for families who had been targeted by manipulative individuals. Our first meeting had 12 attendees. By summer, the number had grown to over 30. We shared stories, healing strategies, and warnings about how to recognize the early signs of such manipulation. Working with the school district, we helped implement new safety protocols for teacher-student interactions, including stricter background checks and guidelines about contact outside school hours. The superintendent, initially defensive about the district's hiring practices, eventually became one of our strongest allies in pushing for these changes. At Tyler's new school, his art began to brighten again. The dark themes and strange symbols disappeared, replaced by colorful family portraits and landscapes. He still had occasional nightmares, but they became less frequent as time passed. 1 year after what we now simply called the incident, our family took a vacation to the beach, just the three of us reconnecting without the shadow of Ms. Harper's influence. Watching Tyler and Jake building an elaborate sandcastle at the water's edge, I reflected on how close we had come to losing everything. The legal proceedings against Eleanor Winters continued with multiple charges across several jurisdictions. She would likely spend many years in prison, but more importantly, her pattern of family infiltration had been permanently disrupted. The experience had left scars on all of us, but it had also reinforced what I had known in my heart all along: trust your instincts when it comes to protecting your family. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Our story became a cautionary tale in parenting forums and school communities. I occasionally spoke at educational conferences about the importance of vigilance and communication. Each time parents approached me afterward with their own stories of subtle manipulations and boundary violations that had made them uncomfortable, but that they had dismissed. Never ignore that feeling in your gut, I always told them. It's there for a reason. As for Jake and me, our marriage emerged stronger from the ordeal, though not without effort and intention. We learned to communicate more openly, to check in with each other regularly, and to never again allow an outside influence to come between us. Tyler, now 9, still sometimes asked difficult questions about Ms. Harper and why she had done what she did. Some people are so broken inside that they try to take happiness from others instead of building their own, I explained to him one evening as I tucked him in, but they can never really steal what matters most: the love inside a family. He considered this thoughtfully. I always knew you were my real mom, he said finally. Even when she tried to make me think different things, deep down I knew. I held him close, breathing in the scent of his shampoo and the indescribable essence that was uniquely him. And I always knew you were my son, I whispered. Nothing and no one could ever change that. Have you ever had someone try to come between you and a loved one? What warning signs did you notice, and how did you handle the situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family resilience. Remember, trust your instincts and protect what matters most. Thank you for listening, and may you always have the courage to stand up for your family when it matters most.